Hello, in this tutorial we will show you how to edit the front page of your website. Upon logging in and being greeted with your dashboard, we will use our mouse cursor to find the pages. Hovering over it, we will select all pages. This will now show us all the available pages currently on the website. Next, we can use our search feature to locate the front page, or we can go through our list to find it manually. As you can see scrolling down, I've located SignMaster and it is titled the front page. Upon hovering over it, we have the options to edit, quick edit, trash, view, or edit with Elementor. Please note that we will select edit with Elementor as this is the page builder that we are currently using. Once the page is loaded, we will use our mouse cursor to navigate around. As you can see moving around the page, certain sections are highlighted with borders. We will start with the very first one. As you can see, there is a very thin blue border appearing in the section. By selecting the Edit Section button, which is the 6 dots at the top, a new window will appear on the left hand side. Here we are able to change the content width of the section, the column gaps, height, vertical alignment, overflow settings. We are able to stretch it, as well as change our HTML tag. Parallax and particles we need not worry about, as these are add-ons. As you can see at our structure, we have it currently set to 50-50. This means that there's one column on the left set to 50, and one column on the right set to 50. Moving on to the styling section, we can choose to change the background. As you can see, we currently have our background set to a blue with an image. We can change this by simply selecting the color, and for the time being I will copy this, and we can change the color as seen here. Next, we can change our image. By selecting the Choose Image, a new window will appear. As you can see, by default it shows us which image we have selected. For this tutorial, I will select the image to the right and select Insert Media. As you can see, that image is now changed. I will go back and I will change the image back to its default. We will select Insert Media and we will change our colors back to default. Moving on, we can change the position of this background image. The moment it is set to center, but we can change it. As you can see there. We will set that back to center, and we can change our attachment. As you can see, the image scrolls with the page, and that is because we have it set to scroll. If we set it to fixed, you will see that the image stays in place as we scroll. Next, we can change our repeat, which is set to no repeat. If we will set this to repeat, it will repeat the image. As you can see, this image is fairly large, so there is no need for the repeat. Next, we come to our sizing, which is set to cover. We can change this by simply choosing the option we wish. Moving on, we can add scrolling effects and mouse effects to the section. We can also go on to our background overlay, and as you can see, we have set it at a dark blue. Moving forward, we can change the location of this overlay and the secondary color as well as its location. We can change the type, angle, and the transparency of this overlay. Scrolling down, we have reached a border. Here we can add either a normal border or a border that appears once we hover. We will simply select the border type we wish, and you will see that the border has appeared live. As you can see, this border only pertains to this section as this is the section that we are busy editing. Next, I can choose to change the width of the border as well as the color of the border. I will now set that back to default. And we will move forward. We then come on to the shape divider. We can choose to insert a shape divider either at the top or the bottom of the section. By choosing our type, you will see that the shape divider has appeared at the top. Next, we can change the width as well as the height of this divider, as well as the color, and so forth. I will now set that back to default, and the same can be said for the bottom. As you can see, we currently already have a shape divider, and the type is set to weight, indicating the section here. Moving on to our typography section, this you need not worry about, as we will handle this in another section. Moving on to our advanced tab, we have come to our margin and our padding. Our margin and our padding is the way that the content is displayed within and outside of its containers. As you can see, we currently have our padding set to 20 at the top and 20 at the bottom. As you can see, there will be the space here. If I was to remove the 20 top, we can see the space has disappeared. If I was to set the top at 100, we can see that there is more space at the top. I will put that back to default, and we will continue. Moving on to the motion effects, here we can choose to add scrolling effects, to make it sticky, and to add an entrance animation. In our responsiveness tab, we can choose to reverse the columns, or to hide the column or to hide the section on certain views. Our attributes and custom CSS you need not worry about, as this is for more in-depth development. Now that I've shown you the section, we will move on to a column. Again, using our mouse cursor to navigate around, we will find a column which is indicated by the white and black dotted border. By selecting the Edit Column icon, the window on the left will appear. Again, we have our layout settings, which contain our column width, vertical alignment, horizontal alignment, widget spacing, and HTML tag. Moving on to our styling, we can choose to add a background. I'm going to add a background color of black to show you how this works. As you can see, I've changed the color background to black, and that applies only to this column, because that is the column we are editing. I will select it back to default, and we will move on. The same thing goes for the image. If we wish to choose an image, it will only apply to this column, as seen here. We can all remove the image, and we can choose to add a scrolling and mouse effects. Again, in our background overlay, we can choose to add either a color or an image to this background overlay. As you can see, I will change the color back to default. And with the image, we have our normal options to change its positioning, its attachment, the repeat settings, as well as the size. We can also change the transparency of this background with the slider below. I will set that back to default, and we will continue. Again, we have come to our border, which we can change, and it will only apply to this section, or column rather. Again, we can choose the sizing and colors that we wish. We can also add a border for once you hover over the section as seen here. Moving on to our typography, again you do not need to worry about this, as we will handle it in another section. Moving on to our advanced, again we have our margin and our padding, which you can see we have not fiddled with, as this is sitting neatly in the middle. Moving on to our motion effects, we can add scrolling effects, mouse effects, as well as an entrance animation, as seen here. I will now remove that, and we will continue. Our responsiveness again allows us to hide this column, and our attributes and custom CSS you do not need to worry about. Now that we have covered a column, we will move on to an actual widget. Again, using our mouse cursor, we will navigate until we find a widget indicated with the thin blue border. Again, we will select the edit icon, and the window will appear on the left. As you can see, this widget is a heading widget, and we can change the title. As you can see, the changes happen live on the right. We can then remove this extra text, and here we can insert a link. For example, if we want customers to click on the "Do you need signage?" and it takes them to the shop, we will simply insert the shop URL here. Next, we can choose to change our size, HTML tag, and our alignment. Moving on to the styling section, here we can choose to change the text color, as you can see here. We can change the typography, which includes the font, the size, the sizing, the weight, which would be the boldness or the thickness. We can also transform the text, style the text, or decorate it. Here we also have the option to change the line height as well as the letter spacing. I will close that window and we will move forward. In our advanced tab, again we have no margin or padding set, as this title is fitting nicely in the section. Moving down, we have our content protection and advanced tooltips, which are add-ons and need not to be fiddled with. In our motion effects, we can choose to either add a scrolling effect, mouse effect, make it sticky, as well as add an interest animation. As you can see, this only pertains to the actual widget, as that is what we are editing. Next, we can choose to add a background. Again, we can choose the color we wish, and it will apply only to this widget. You can also do the same thing can be said with an image, as you can see there. Moving on, we can add a border to this widget. As before, we would select our type, select our width, and we would select our color. Moving on, we have come to our positioning, which you do not need to worry about. Our response of this will be where we can choose to hide it on desktop, tablet, or mobile, and our attributes and custom CSS you do not need to worry about. That is how you would edit a widget. So to recap, you will simply use your mouse cursor to highlight the section you are wishing to edit, select the edit button, and the window will appear on the left hand side. We can do this throughout the entire website, and that is how you would edit your widgets and front page. Once we're happy with all the changes made, we will simply select Update, and the changes will be saved. Lastly, in this tutorial, I will be covering the SEO, or Search Engine Optimization. Search Engine Optimization, or SEO, is what Google will use to index this page within its search results. As you can see here, we are currently scoring a very good score, and our two main keywords, SignMaster and signage, is in green. As you can see, all good on all of these tabs. If we were to switch to our graphic design, you can see that there are one or two errors. Please note that we will be covering this later, and we will be changing that to green. We have just left it orange for the tutorial purposes. That is how you would edit the front page of your website.